Dan, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to start by learning a little bit more about MolecularMD. So if you can tell us about that.
Sure. MolecularMD was started in early 2006, actually in collaboration with our clinical scientific founder, Brian Druker. His claim to fame was a lead clinical investigator of a drug Gleevec, which was for a type of leukemia, and was really one of the first very successful targeted cancer therapies. While the drug was successful, certain patients actually become resistant to the drug. And so it's important that you monitor those patients for minimal residual disease and then potentially detect for resistance. The real problem there was that the testing that was available was one, it wasn't quite sensitive. It was needed to accurately monitor the patients, but also it was inconsistent and it wasn't standardized. Brian consulted with us to basically design a better test that more precisely and more accurately monitored these patients. A number of pharmaceutical companies adopted that test for a number of their phase 3 and post or phase 4 trials.
I'd like to talk about personalized medicine. It has tremendous promise. It's a very exciting field. It is providing more accurate data. How do you describe personalized medicine, especially in the last 5 years?
Well, one, I'd say, obviously in the most contexts, it's economically driven in that I think the estimate of 40% of drug prescriptions out there basically have no effect. And so, a lot of times, prescription drug medicine is a trial and error approach. While certainly there are some drugs that, depending if there's no side effects or they're not that costly, that's okay. But in areas where, particularly in terms of oncology, a trial and error approach is not really one that you want to go with. And not only that, but in oncology with chemotherapy, obviously with the toxicity and everything that goes along with that, there was a need to better diagnose the tumors and try to have a more targeted approach. Oncology was kind of set up for personalized medicine because it's essentially more of a detailed diagnosis of the tumor. And in fact, non-small cell lung cancers, where you went from 3 or 4 subtypes, now you probably have 10 to 15 subtypes, depending upon the molecular makeup. It was science-driven at first, but then the real challenge was the physician adoption. There was a lot of education. These tests in personalized medicine, they're higher complexity than your traditional diagnostic test. And so in terms of being able to not only make sure you're generating an accurate result, but also making it such that the physician can easily interpret the result to then turn that into treatment management. And there was a lot of physician education that went into that. But also, and I think in oncology, obviously, patients are going to be very involved in their treatment. And so I think at times it was often the patients who were reading up on the newest approaches in personalized medicine and then asking their doctors, hey, should we consider these different approaches?
And how are physicians embracing it now?
In oncology, they're embracing it only because that's what the market demands. Any major oncology institution or private practice wants to consider themselves that they've taken a personalized medicine approach. It's amazing just in the last 5 years, based on how they've been able to tie various genotypes to different therapies in oncology, that's required. In other indications where there certainly is a lot of potential for personalized medicine, at times the adoption isn't rapid. One is that it takes a lot of time to get up to speed on how you're going to order and interpret these tests, and then how that's going to affect, and quite often physicians don't have the time to kind of keep up to speed on some of these new treatment guidelines. That's, again, unfortunate, but we'd like to think that physicians are always keeping up with the latest and greatest guidelines, but the nature of our healthcare system is that oftentimes they don't have that time to do that.
Okay, so that's an obstacle and a challenge that needs to be embraced. Let me take it a step further now. When we look at the vision in the future, what do you see for personalized medicine? What is its potential?
There was a lot of expectations and a lot of potential hype once we knew we would have access to a lot of data and being able to generate that data. But now I think we're tempering that. We're moving away from being reactive and much more proactive. And so the fact that with the clinical trials are going to be designed around this personalized medicine approach, versus before you would generate a lot of data and then go back and try to extract that. So I think just the proactive nature of it means that it's less of a fishing expedition and more that the trials, et cetera, are designed appropriately to determine if a diagnostic is actually going to add value or not. We're starting to see the results of that. In addition, all the new technologies that are coming out. Generally, newer technologies would pretty much be relegated to more life science research, and it would take a really long time for them to transition into a clinical laboratory. But now both the platform developers and the clinical laboratories see the demand of this data, but moving that from a research environment to a clinical environment, that amount of time and work can't be underestimated, because the test has to be robust, reproducible. But there's certainly, a lot of these new technologies will be accelerated and transferred quicker into the clinical lab, which will allow, I think, growth in that whole personalized medicine space.
Very exciting space.
Yes.
Dan, thank you very much for being with us. And Dan Snyder with MolecularMD, and thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.